Hello and welcome to Limitless, the show that brings you love and inspiration. My guest today is the founder of Urban MBA, a charity that empowers young people and those looking for a career change to start up their own business. He is dedicated to inspire the next generation of leaders through his teachings at Urban MBA. So far, he has cultivated over 60 young entrepreneurs and seen more than 300 students participate in the program. Please welcome my special guest, Kofi Oppong. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Maria. I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to the chat.
It is a privilege. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Now, I know that you have, you're doing amazing work. You've got like 60 young entrepreneurs, and obviously 300 students participating. Can you tell me some of the success story and how has it been so far?
So some of the success stories, I presume maybe the best person to start off with is somebody that a lot of people know who previously, and has actually won the Gordon Ramsay show. There's a lady called Victoria for Sunmo plantain chips, and she was on the second Urban MBA course nearly 10 years ago. And when she started, she had her plantain chips just in a big glass jar, and we were testing out the program, and we were doing it with another organization in Hackney, and we always knew she was going to do really well because the product was fantastic. So she's then since gone on to do all these bigger things and has just launched another range of product that she's co-designed with Gordon Ramsay, and is working in other programs, leadership programs like the Barclays Eagles Lab, one that she's doing at the moment. So throughout the journey with her, and there's a couple of others that I'm going to talk about, wherever it's needed, they will come back. So she came back to me and spoke to me around the pandemic time when she was looking for finance at that particular time. So I put her in touch with other people that she knew, because inevitably, even when you grow a business, that challenge and that problem, Maria, that we have of being Black founders, of finding finance, is a horrible one. And at each time you go to scale, you need more money and you need to find the right people. So it's a sort of never-ending journey in terms of what we do. But the point I'm making about that is that many of those successful entrepreneurs have been with us for nearly 10 years or longer, and that is very, very important. So another one that we've got that right now is maybe one of the hottest young designers on the market is a brand called Saint Giovanni Delamont, which is a fashion brand that when the guy met me, he was actually not living at home at the time, and we've worked through his brand now to where it is at the moment, and he is trending. Lots of celebrities are in his product, etc. But again, it's been 10 years worth of work. And even now, when it comes to what he's doing next, he will look for me for advice as well as go and do what else he needs to do. But we build that trusted journey. And what the problem is at the moment, and slightly deviating from your question, is that a lot of the organizations that are doing good for our marginalized communities, etc., it's a quick fix where they just give them some advice there and then and say, go on. That doesn't deal with real life. And real life and being an entrepreneur throws all sorts of challenges at you. At each stage, you're going to need more advice in order to do that. So those are two. We've got even more on recent ones. There's a young lady called, not so young, she's Rachel Cooks, and she's doing African-inspired food. Nigerian. She should be one you should get on the show. But the great thing about when you're working even with somebody like that, she was a professional in the business, but very unhappy. And what she did was phone me around the time of last year, and she's just like, listen, I think it's time to quit my job. And you have to do that at the right times and give them the right advice. So I just wanted to make sure she was clear on what was going to happen, and sure she could do this next thing, because she started her food business in the pandemic, and now she's all over the place and growing her profile. So it's that type of thing. And the big thing to remember is that when you're doing this as an organization, and if you've really got a real mission in terms of what you're doing, then this is a long-term journey. And I think this is one of the big problems that affects our young people. And as we go on in this talk, you probably ask me, but it affects our young people because they don't plan long-term. They want the quick fix. And that is the biggest problem as to why they get into so much trouble, because they're prepared to accept the consequences that come with that.
Amazing. And I like the fact that you talked about the fact that it is a long journey. One needs to be ready for when you decide to be an entrepreneur. As I well know, I mean, you need to do it long, but the problem can be sometimes momentum. And I want to talk to you about that maybe later on. But initially, I want to talk about this process because it's so interesting. The fact that you've had them, retained them, worked with them, and seen some proper success stories that we can talk about and validate and see before our eyes on television globally. So when you get these young people, what stage are they at? Is it at a dream stage? Have they set it up already? Or do you start with nothing and just sort of inspire them and then they come up with an idea? Talk me through the process, please.
So that's actually very interesting because I've done talks recently and nobody's asked about what we do on the course. So our course is very thorough. It's very different to what you would get with most courses, and that's why we call it Urban MBA. So for anybody that's not aware, an MBA is Masters in Business Administration, and it's what we call the top jobs, the top sort of course that you would get at Oxford, Cambridge, and Harvard. And an MBA, when you go to do it, costs anything from £50,000 all the way up to £200,000 in the UK. So most of our marginalized communities will never get the opportunity to really do that. When you look at this problem with universities, etc., all the top universities like Cambridge and Oxford come from 9 schools in the UK, and they call them Ivy League schools in the US. So it's a selected process that only those can go there. When I was writing out the course, and I wrote it out at the time I was in my corporate job, it was because of the fact that I didn't enjoy school or get much out of school. So most of my teachings and learnings came from sport or reading books in particular, like Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Celestine Prophecy, which taught me a lot about spirituality and in those areas, and how you tend to use things like the unconscious mind. So the first thing I decided with the course was one of the biggest problems of entrepreneurship is you need to know about yourself. So nobody does any business in our course. The first bit is all about mindset and neuroscience. So we talk about brainwave patterns. We talk about setting long-term goals and visions, and they have to do a vision board for where they're going to be in 20 or 30 years' time. We then work back on the medium and short term of that in terms of how that operates. And it works out to be very similar to the theory of change model that people might understand in social enterprises and charities. All of these things are done. And where they come up with the ideas is a section called What's the Big Idea? And in What's the Big Idea, we go through history and some of the things that have happened and how people have become successful. I am not sure if you're aware, Maria, but they have predicted 10 years of innovation is going to, in the next 10 years, 40 years of innovation is going to happen. And that means much technological changes. It is the time of technological changes is the time when wealth transfer happens. I'm very clear on that. People don't tell you that, and they don't help you to understand. So the best example I use for that, and we are talking about the course, is the fact that HMV in the UK was the biggest music sellers at that time. What they didn't anticipate was the internet, and they were actually told by their marketing person at that particular time that people were going to download music. HMV did not listen to him. They threw him out. And what eventually happened is that they didn't anticipate what the internet did, and that's why they now have 2 scattered stores in the UK compared to the big behemoth they were at that time in terms of what. So when these transformative technologies come across, our marginalized communities need to understand that. So What's the Big Idea in our course shows them the future, the history of the past and the future. So right now we are talking about quantum, AI, 3D printing, all of these things, because they're going to shape the next 10 years. And what we see as traditional jobs and enterprise is not there. Each part of the course works like that to build a whole thing. And then they have to then pitch at the end their business idea. They do an MVP in week 4 after they've got that information and build up an idea. Then it gets validated by a panel. And then at the end, they then have to pitch that idea and take it forward, which is why I believe our people are most successful. Because what we say is you might have a food idea, like what I mentioned with Rachel earlier on. But what happens when 3D printing comes in? And there's potential that 3D printing will print food, right? So yes, it's already been done.
Wow.
KFC have printed a burger. There's all sorts of things going on right, with that. And also when we look at somewhere like McDonald's, they now have automated fully automated 100% stores in Texas and everything that's coming. So the problem is that you would only get that information at Oxford, Cambridge, or Harvard. Where you come to us, it's given to you all fully. So what you are is you have your idea, and you also know where that sector of where you are might be going in the future. So at the pivot points in life, which in business, which is 3, 5, and 7, we've got immense information over the times that we've done there. That 3 years, most people pivot their idea because they understand the industry they're in. So it's about survival the first 1, 2, and 3 years. 5 years is when you start breaking even. And then 7 years is when you realize profit. So when you break even at 5 years, what also happens is you've built up all the networks and everything else that you can do your business, and you start seeing an acceleration in profit, and you start making profit around 7. Now that's a long-term journey, and that's why I said to you, we say to everybody, it's a long haul. In this day and age, as we're going into now, Maria, what's going to happen is that we know in 10 years, we're going to get 40 years of innovation. So the speed of change is going to get quicker within that period. And that's what they are armed with. Our course is very, very, very different. And so many people have come onto it, old and young, and they've gone, oh my God, what I never knew all this stuff existed. And I think that what we've got to do is we've got to do that to empower our marginalized communities to get into these technologies early enough to shape them for the future, because that is why we get racial profiled on some of the technologies that's coming. There's no Black people in it who are then dealing with what these computers that are scanning us will do. So it's got racial unconscious or racial bias written into it by the people who are writing it. It needs to come to marginalized communities first, so they learn how to utilize it for themselves and get within the industry. A long-winded answer, but sometimes people don't understand what makes our course so successful and why we have cultivated it. Is because there's been a lot of thought into putting into it and how we really establish a foothold within an area that we don't have any foothold, and 5% of the people hold most of the wealth and the keys.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. This is definitely something that is needed now. And to carry on, a lot of people, the thing is, young people in school need this kind of information.
You're so right.
Yes. College, just even at a basic level, they need it.
Right.
Because you find that a lot of young people in school now are disinterested in the school system.
Yeah.
And having spoken to quite a number of them, they say, well, it's not, we're doing courses that don't necessarily cater for what we want to do. When we are doing generic subjects that are nonsensical when we look at it from the greater scheme of things. Something, well, that's true, actually. If only we could cater the education to what they want to do, streamline it, get rid of obviously there's basic information that they need generally to have just discourse with a variety of people from various different backgrounds. But also when it comes to specialized training, it needs to be from the maybe school level. These options need to be given from school level, and it perhaps needs to be followed through. Now, I know that you have had 20 years of corporate experience. Can you tell me about your background in that, please?
Okay, so the reason why the corporate experience maybe makes sense, and it's nothing for me to really brag about, is the fact that I am African Ghanaian, and as I tell most people, my parents are first generation Ghanaians, so they threw me out of house and home at 17. I didn't know where to go and what to do. Got into a bit of trouble, and the one thing that saved me was sport. So to have a career as I did was quite unique for me, because I ended up not getting into the normal scenario with gangs, etc. And I ended up in sports retail. So I worked for 2 organizations. One was JD Sports, which I worked for 10 years, and became a manager in there. And then I worked for Nike for another 10 years. Where I opened the Nike Town store way back in 1998, and then I went on to have a product role, because product was my passion, based around sport. So here's somebody, as I've said on numerous occasions, who wasn't sure what they were going to do, wandering the streets homeless, all of a sudden is going around the globe talking to people about Nike and what we did. So the most important part of that was the belief that this stuff can be done. And it's a lot of my learnings from that has helped me to cement what I did with the course, because these companies are some of the biggest companies in the world, and what they do, you can take that and utilize. And when you see a lot of entrepreneurs historically, they've all had a corporate background, because they have the understanding then of how to have meetings, how to build business plans, how to do long-term planning and all of that. And I think that this generation who are becoming entrepreneurs without that are missing that element of things. And that's why it's so important that what the course that we do gives them that structure and that understanding of what is like in life. So that corporate side helped me to galvanize. But I must say, I had already started building the course of Urban MBA based on what you said earlier on about the education system. And the big thing with my African background is that most of our courses are based around stories, because in Africa we tell stories to get people to remember. And I remember Nancy the Spider as a Ghanaian growing up in terms of what we did. So we do not do the educational system as such as what you've said. We tell stories, and the neuroscience stories around the matrix, the red and the blue pill, because what we're trying to get them to understand is the unconscious mind, and that there's a world that we understand and a world we don't understand, and how do you tap into that? So it's storytelling, so they retain the information better. And my corporate background helped me shape the business and operational side of things that people will need to have in order to grow their business idea. So that's how that sort of wraps into it in a nutshell.
If you know what I'm getting from this is just passion that is exuding from you. You know, we talk about a good and a bad teacher, somebody who's but at the end of the day, what we do as educators, as teachers, as people who are transferring knowledge is transferring passion. If you can transfer passion, then the information that is within that the passion carries will be easier for the person to digest, retain, run with, and produce something from it. I mean, Matthew chapter 7 verse 16 says, you will know them by their fruit. You will know a man, you will know a person by their fruit. So really, we're seeing the fruits of what you're producing here, and it's absolutely fabulous. Could you tell us some of, like, for people who might be interested in joining your organization, what they'll need to do, where they'll need to find information so they can actually be able to tap into what you're doing, please?
Okay, so we have a website, which is urbanmba.co.uk. You can put your name in there and sign up for many of our courses there, or just put your name so that when the courses are ready, you can join them. We run, as I said, 6-12 weeks, and we've just completed a 1-year university style course that is at level 6. Now, you mentioned the education system earlier on, and that is where we believe we need to go. All our courses are accredited. All our courses are accredited, so you will get some form of from level 3 all the way up to level 6. But we felt that despite our success and enterprise story, our African background means they want that piece of paper. So we had to make sure all our courses were also accredited, because all the young people need to show their mum and dad something to say that it's happened, even though that isn't important for me. But we have to look at our community and what makes our community tick. So that's one of the reasons why we do that. Ghana's my home nation, and right now everybody's running over there to invest or do something with Ghana. The problem is it is leaving all our young people to one side, and the employment rate, etc., is not really great. The way I see things is that we are already in the 4th industrial revolution here. Ghana will hit the 4th industrial revolution faster than we will do.
Yes,
that's taken for us, because they see it happening. We have to empower the young people there to know what's going to happen very quickly, and then to utilize that. So that same thing with technology, we're going over there and saying these things are coming. Don't look at what's happened in the past, and you need to think wider and say, when quantum hits us and all these things hits us, that you're ready to go, because those are where the jobs are going to come from. Right now, Ghana's too far back in the way that it's dealing with education and all of that. So we're taking the Urban MBA course there, using what's happening in Africa as a global nation, even talking about the fact that we're moving away from the dollar, and there's a shift happening with China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, how this will affect the country. And so we're taking that information and we're starting to empower the whole Oyibi district, which has 6 schools in there with entrepreneurship courses, so that they can be ready for what's about to happen and not be left behind when all the people from the West come to Ghana and take all the millions of pounds that is going to be generated. So that's what the project is about.
Do you know, Kofi, I've been saying this, and I've been saying this, so many people in Africa, no, seriously, that are trying to leave, and we've got to reverse this brain drain, because I constantly say, why are you trying to leave? Do you not realize that the rest of the world wants what you've got? Do you not realize what you have? Stay, work on it, build it. There's loads that needs to be done in Africa generally. And I'm glad that you've mentioned this with Ghana. I think we should watch a little bit of that now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Parents Association chairperson for Nanaman School, where we're doing the IT room renovation, is here. This is Mr. Hammond, who's the PA chairman. So, Mr. Hammond,
we're also very grateful for what you started here. It's going to benefit the school, the community, and then the nation as a whole.
Thank you.
So we are very pleased.
Okay, thank you.
We're also going to support
Thank you.
in our own small way, whatever it takes. We're going to support it so that it succeeds.
Thank you.
When it succeeds.
Cement is in here. I'm just going to sort the cement out and then we'll take it down to the floor. School, so I'll just drop off the paint and yeah, we'll see when the mason can come. Okay, 29 August, the time is about 3:30, and as you can see, we've still got to probably go over this for another day, but compared to how it was before, and up on top before where the grill was cemented and painted over that. So we'll do a couple more coats. But yeah, looking like a brand new room basically.
Absolutely fabulous. That video just shows some of the possibilities, some of the things that can be done. Now, of course, earlier when we were talking, you spoke about AI, you talked about the future, what we expect to see within the next 10 years or so. What are some of the changes, the actual tangible changes that we're going to expect to see? And how can people start realigning themselves and positioning themselves in order to be ready for that as entrepreneurs?
So one of the things that people don't take into account a lot of times for entrepreneurship is that a lot of this stuff happens with infrastructure. So you must watch the infrastructure of your country grow. So Ghana's been in a bit of a Chinese scenario who are building the railway lines, etc., over in Ghana, who they haven't done properly. There's been some stuff going on in Tema and some of the other areas. And you will find that even in the UK, where I am, places like Hackney, where we are, until they created that train line that came there, it was hard for that. So we want the people in wherever we're teaching to recognize, to look out for these infrastructure changes, because those people that are spending a lot of money on the infrastructure changes will show you where things are going. And once that infrastructure is created, there's a better chance of what's going to happen for that country and where it's going. The Oyibi district has 6 schools in close proximity. And what we want to do is get them all understanding about what to look for and how they get involved in these areas and how they generate wealth. One of the things they might want to do is we want to long-term do exchanges as well, where they go to other countries and see different things in terms of what's going on. Many of the kids there, they've been waiting for a new curriculum from Ghana, and the school books are 2 years late. 2 years late. So they still haven't received, the teachers still haven't received anything. And it's no wonder why they're so far behind. So one, we want them to have a bigger global picture, because first and foremost, they have too small a narrative where they are. Right, they need to understand it's the 4th industrial revolution and what's going on elsewhere. Then they need to apply that to say, okay, well, Ghana's going to do that. What is it that I'm good at, or I can get involved in? That will help shape that. And Ghana needs to have tech and all the other things coming through as well. The other thing that we have, and you saw the reason why the course was called Urban MBA FC, is because, again, I was a football player and my dad did not want me to do any of that. And so consequently, you'll see as well, Ghana has very few sports people that come out, very different to Nigeria. And I think that we need to cultivate that, because there's a bit of everything that we can do, but also sports teaches you lots of things. So we want to work with those 400 people in Oyibi district in the 6 schools, where we're developing what they do and try and create an enterprise hub there and help all those young people develop, and also help the school teachers create curriculums that doesn't rely on the government. Or so they work half with the government, but also half about entrepreneurship and giving the right information. We are just joined the BRICS, and we're going towards that way where crypto and all these things are coming in. How do you explain that to a young person in Ghana who doesn't even have shoes? And this is the things that we've got to think about in terms of getting them. If we want to move out of poverty, we need to very quickly move into those areas. So our goals are to do that. For the 400 people, provide sport as well, so they have something else to do, but keep cutting edge education continuously being run there, because otherwise the system is again too expensive. A lot of them can't do that. And then we can then give them pathways to get further education or to do other things in terms of maybe become entrepreneurs. And that's the mission for Ghana.
Fabulous. And how can people help you in this? Obviously, these sort of things need help. I know you have governmental support, but how can people really be able to, like in the Western world, in the UK or elsewhere, how can they really support? What do you need?
So what's really interesting about the video you played is that we sent them like laptops over there. I was horrified and mortified when I heard that the guy was teaching how to use a computer on the board, but they had none of that, and teaching them about Excel. And he was still writing it on the board. And I'm like, in this day and age. So one of the things that we need to do, and we know that is get hold of somebody like Vodafone or one of those people to provide internet for that whole area. We need those sort of bigger companies. And I'm not plugging Vodafone in any shape or form. I know they're in Ghana, but we want to look at how we get all the IT and equipment up to scratch so these people can get the right training. You cannot go from just seeing something on a board to all of a sudden trying to merge with a country that's developing. And so we need to give them those tools that will be able to do that. So it's corporate support on in terms of that area. We need areas where they can go and get work experience. Getting work experience in Ghana is really tough because there isn't enough companies that can do that. So anybody who can give support to provide that, or technical stuff that allows them to be able to get onto the internet and do all of these things, which is eventually going to come in the next 2 to 3 years anyway. This is what we're really looking for, that they can maybe support us to do that. And it's not always about money, and that's what sometimes these corporates think that we're after. If they could donate 500 laptops, we will do the rest. It's one of those things, but then everybody there can then get used to a computer, which we take for granted in terms of what we do.
Amazing. Thank you so very much. I mean, this is, you are a true champion for many communities, and I wish others could be like this too. So people out there, if you're moved by this, please connect with Kofi Oppong and connect with Urban, MBA, just to support these people, and of course, many will be interested in your course as well, I'm sure. So, connect with him. Can you just repeat how people can connect with you again, please?
So the best way to connect is through the website, because we can give out all the social media stuff, but there's different ones for all the different platforms. So if you go onto the website, you can see the work that we do. Some of it might inspire you. It's urbanmba.co.uk. There is a sign-up space there that you can sign up for any of the courses that we have. And once the courses are being run, you get information that will allow you to do that. So that's the best place to find out what we do. If not, then check us out on LinkedIn as the professional space to be. We encourage everybody to do that. LinkedIn would be the best one, other than the website. And if you're one of those that's on Instagram, then it's urban_MBA on Instagram.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest and just enlightening me, and of course everyone out there as well. Thank you. I look forward to everything that you do. I'm going to be following you, and of course excited about the developments as they progress along. So thank you so much, Kofi.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on your show. So thank you very much.
Lovely. And that's goodbye for me, and of course goodbye from Kofi until next week. Bye.